Let me know if that's coming through for you. Perfect. Excellent. All right, so we can go ahead and get started. And the animal in question that Tony was referring to is the southern tamandua. So if you have ever seen these guys, or if you've heard of them, they're little arboreal anteaters, and they're my absolute favorite animals in the world. I know I'm supposed to be a bird nerd, but I am a small mammal girl at heart, I have to say. So these guys, they really captured my attention when I first started working at the National Zoo. They've got these prehensile tails. They can climb trees. They're native to to Central and South America, and they're just these really funny, goofy little animals that kind of walk on their knuckles, and really strong, really great little members of the ecosystem there. And they too benefit from bird-friendly habitat, so that makes both my small mammal and my birder heart happy as well. So just to get us started today, a quick, I have a hard time doing both the presentation and seeing everybody on screen. Zoom doesn't really allow for that terribly well. So I'll use the chat to kind of ask questions of you all. And then if you could just type your answers in the chat, that tends to pop up, and I found that's the best way to kind of keep the engagement going, so it's not just me talking at you for this next little stretch here. So as Tony mentioned, I'm the program manager for Smithsonian Bird Friendly, and I'd like to start off by just getting to know what folks in our virtual room here know about Bird Friendly already. So quick poll, if you could put your answer in the chat. Let me know, are you just hearing about Bird Friendly for the first time? Have you heard maybe a little bit about it, but you're not quite sure what it's about? If you know maybe a little bit, you're curious to learn more, or if you're a bird-friendly expert, wherever you are on that spectrum, I'd love to kind of know who's in the room today, so I know what types of things to kind of emphasize over this next little stretch we have together, or maybe some things to gloss over if you guys already know the nuts and bolts about bird friendly. So feel free to put where you stand in the chat here. Let me know what you're thinking. So I see Susan knows a little bit, would like to know more, curious to know more. I would hope that folks who are attending the talk today are at least curious to learn more, even if you know a little bit about it. Hopefully, if not, you would be, I don't know, watching Jeopardy or something like that, knowing very little. Okay, great. Yeah, so good to know as folks are, kind of thinking about this, happy to learn more. That's awesome. That's kind of what we're hoping for here as we spend the rest of our time together here. So we are going to spend the rest of the time talking a little bit. We're going to go in a little time machine back and forth as we kind of talk about the creation, formation of the Bird Friendly program, and then kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what it means and how you, as folks who love and appreciate birds, can kind of support this effort and what it means for birds and biodiversity overall. So start off with just a little bit of history and background for us. So it's kind of a little bit about me, but wanted to focus on kind of where I'm working as well. So we are the Bird Friendly program is part of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, which is housed at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute that's in Washington, D.C. Now we're part of the full Smithsonian institution, which if you zoom out even further, it's actually part of the United States federal government. So we are part of a really big entity, a really big institution with our tiny little bird friendly program, which consists of 2.5 people right now who work on this full time. So small piece of a very, very big entity. So Smithsonian is the world's largest museum and research complex. It's 175 years old, headquartered in Washington, D.C., but with research projects occurring around the world. Our Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center was founded in 1991, and the bird friendly certification itself came about in around the year 2000. So the Migratory Bird Center, our big focus is of course migration. So we are dedicated to understanding, conserving, and championing the grand phenomenon of bird migration. We're home to lots of different research projects, as well as our bird friendly coffee certification program. So why birds? That's a question that some folks ask us. I know probably not anyone in this room as a bird society yourself, but a lot of folks, kind of want to know why focus on birds when kind of you want to look at the full picture of biodiversity and what's going on within each ecosystem. And we really like this quote from a former board member and tropical conservation biologist involved with our program, Thomas Lovejoy, said, if you take care of birds, you take care of most of the big environmental problems in the world. So when we think about that, we think about birds as indicator species. So if there's a healthy bird population, that generally means that the ecosystem itself is probably doing quite well. If the bird population is unhealthy, though, on the flip side, it's likely that there are some problems that need to be addressed when we think about the bigger picture of ecosystem and environmental health. So if we think then back to 2019, so we're going in our time machine back just a few years first, published in 2019 was the study that addressed the loss of 2.9 billion birds. So nearly 3 billion birds disappeared between 1970 and when the study was published in 2019. So this was a remarkable loss of birds, and migratory birds in particular were devastated through this, this decline. So it's one of the most kind of significant losses of birds that's been documented. So kind of put into context is about 1 in 4 birds disappeared. And that's kind of 2 in 5 of these Baltimore Orioles, and 2.5 of these birds were considered to be migratory birds between North, Central, and South America. So this is a really significant loss of birds, and one of the most significant drivers of this loss was identified as habitat destruction. So when we think about migratory birds in particular, and when we think about that through the lens of habitat loss, you're talking about loss of habitat in a number of different areas. So we like this, kind of this animation that we see here, because we see sort of the species diversity, or density and diversity that moves up and down through North America down to Central and South America as the annual migration cycle completes. So this has been Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center's area of focus, really, and what has kind of led to the work that we're doing now through the Bird Friendly program. So really focused on the phenomenon migration, and then also on the conservation of migratory species and what that looks like in an active sense. So we're going to hop in our time machine again and go back in time to 1987. So the gentleman you see pictured here is Russ Greenberg. He is the founding director of the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, and alongside Dr. Robert Rice established the Bird Friendly Coffee program in the early 2000s. But before that came about, Greenberg and his ornithology colleagues were observing migratory birds on overwintering grounds in Central and South America. They were taking notes on which species types were present and what types of habitat they were using. And what he noticed is that while this decline was kind of already starting to be observed, kind of, fewer migratory birds when the habitat was destroyed, he noticed that in shaded areas on coffee farms, they were providing really high value habitat for migratory birds in particular. And when we think about what that means in the global context, it's not really surprising. So the map that you see here shows the intersection of coffee and biodiversity hotspots. So our biodiversity hotspots are in orange, and then they're overlaid with the yellow color there. Those are where coffee is grown around the globe. And then those little blue dots, that's a little teaser for something very exciting we have coming down the pike very, very soon, which is cocoa growing regions as well. So coffee is cultivated on over 27 million acres of land worldwide, and it's the second most traded commodity in the world. So there's a lot of coffee that's being grown, and there's a lot of coffee that's moving from A to B to fuel our collective caffeine fix. So a lot of this coffee is produced by small-scale farmers, with about 120 million people who are depending either directly or indirectly on coffee production for their economic livelihood. Now, historically, coffee was grown entirely in the shade. So it was planted kind of underneath the shade of native trees without clear-cutting forests, and kind of grew there and was harvested. Now, that was the practice up until about the 1970s. So when we think back to just a couple of slides ago, that's when that 3 billion birds study started as well. So we're starting to see some timelines align. So in the 1970s, farmers started removing trees and transitioning to a sun-grown monoculture, which would result in higher yields for them. So what that meant was, instead of growing the coffee underneath the trees, they were eliminating forests so that they could grow coffee and coffee alone. And today, unfortunately, 3/4 of the world's coffee is farmed using practices that leave no space for birds, or worse, are actively destroying forest habitat. So this is a problem for birds, it's a problem for biodiversity, and it's a problem for us as people who care about those things, and for even more reasons that we'll get to in just a little bit. So when we think about sun-grown monocultures, it can be hard to kind of depict. So we really like this image to kind of help tell that story. So the image that you see on the left-hand side there, that's what a sun-grown monoculture tends to look like. So it's just rows and rows and rows of coffee bushes. On the right-hand side, conversely, is a shade-grown coffee agroforestry growing system. So as you can see, it can be a little hard if you don't know exactly what to look for to know where the coffee is actually being grown. So down here, these are your coffee bushes, right in the understory here. And then there's lots of trees and lots of vegetation and greenery all surrounding it. So the agroforestry system, we have the forest that's maintained alongside the agriculture in this kind of more holistic ecosystem. So it should be no surprise when you think about this, that the number of bird species that can be supported in these two different systems goes up significantly the more the system looks like an agroforestry system and the less it looks like a sun-grown monoculture. So what the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center scientists realized in the early 2000s is if we can protect habitat that looks like this on the right-hand side, then that means we can protect a whole heck of a lot of birds as well. So that is why the Bird Friendly Coffee Program was established. We were not coffee people to start. We were ornithologists at heart that just kind of stumbled our way into coffee and found that if we can protect these high quality forest systems on coffee farms, then we can do really great things for bird conservation. So that leads us to kind of our program and what we're all about. So Bird Friendly is a third-party certification program that was created by Smithsonian to protect wildlife habitat on coffee farms. So in the simplest terms, bird-friendly coffee comes from farms that provide good forest-like habitat for birds and other wildlife, like in that shade-grown agroforestry system I just showed you. So created by the Smithsonian scientists in the mid-1990s, we uphold the strictest environmental criteria currently on the market. So that research that happened in the 80s, in the 90s, it founded and led to the creation of the Bird Friendly program, which really formally came together in around the year 2000. A lot of that research was occurring in the 90s. And right now we are proud to call ourselves and proud to say that we are the gold standard in biodiversity friendly coffee that's currently on the market. So 100% of the coffee that bears that Bird Friendly logo you see there is coming from shade grown areas, so areas that maintain lots of high quality shade. It comes from organic farms, and it's 100% pure, which means we don't allow for any mixing, non-certified coffee that's blending in with the certified coffee. Every bean in a bag or a cup of Bird Friendly certified coffee is coming from those high quality agroforestry systems that are providing great spaces for birds and other wildlife. So a little bit about how our program works. So we certify at the farm level, and we have licensing agreements in place at the importer and roaster level that ensure our bird-friendly supply chain remains intact. So we work first with a community of bird-friendly auditors who actually perform the farm inspections. So they're the ones that go out and ensure that all the criteria, which we'll talk about in just a moment, are being met. So those folks receive training from our Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center team on what those criteria are and how to assess for them. So they go out, they perform these inspections, and then once a farm meets the bird-friendly criteria as it's identified by the Migratory Bird Center, it receives a 3-year certification. So that means that the coffee can be labeled and sold as bird-friendly for the next 3 years, at which point they'll have to recertify and go through another inspection period with us. The coffee can then move into the bird-friendly supply chain, where we have a community of licensed importers, roasters, and retailers who help move the coffee to where it will be roasted and ultimately sold to consumers with that bird-friendly logo on it. We pride ourselves in keeping the costs low for growers, so we don't charge anything to the farmers who participate in our program. The only cost that they pay to become bird-friendly certified is whatever they negotiate with the inspector that's performing the bird-friendly inspection. So that's usually just a baseline cost for them for the inspector's time to come out and perform that criteria inspection. And then we're also working to build a market that allows them to sell their coffee at premium prices because of the work that they're doing to protect habitat on their land. We do collect a royalty, but it is at the roaster level. So roasters do pay pennies on the pound royalty, which funds Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center research and allows our program to continue to bring new farms into the program and to grow this program and ultimately grow the habitat that we're protecting within the bird-friendly certification. So I wanted to share a little bit also about our criteria for bird friendly and what it means to actually go through this certification. So one of the very first things that we look at is the shade canopy that's protected. So what is actually happening when you are kind of standing in the middle of the forest? When you look up, how much shade is actually covering the coffee crop that you're seeing there? So what we look for is a minimum of 40% shade cover after pruning season. So if you can imagine standing in the middle of a bird-friendly coffee agroforestry system, you look up, and a minimum of 40% of what you see is covered by leaves. So that's that 40% shade cover that we look for. We also look for a canopy height of at least 12 meters. So that means we want some nice, big, tall trees that are serving as your anchor trees that are going to be in that area where your coffee is being produced. We also look for tree diversity and native tree presence as well. So we want to have at least 11 species of trees within a bird-friendly certified farm. So lots of diversity, different places and different types of food sources for birds to either live in or forage around in, or for the things that they eat to live in and forage around in. And then with native species in particular, we want to see at least 60% of the vegetation being native. And the reason behind that is that calorically speaking, so the calories that the birds are getting from lots of the bugs and the things that are growing on these trees, they're better for the birds if they're coming from that native area. So it's the nutritional equivalent of, eating a nice big hearty salad versus maybe, a cheeseburger or a bag of candy, if it's a non-native thing. So you're getting better calories for the birds coming from these native trees and the native insects that are living around those native trees. We also look at other habitat features. So these are some of the things that are considered to be recommendations of the bird-friendly program. So these are things that we encourage farmers and producers to do and to maintain on their land. But if they don't have them, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for certification. So we would just kind of make note to encourage folks to retain things like stumps, snags, epiphytes, and riparian buffers, and then to keep that structural diversity in check. So you want to have multiple layers of canopy that are over your bird-friendly coffee, and then you're keeping as much of this kind of wild forested ecosystem in place as you can. So the stumps and the snags, they provide great places for birds to hide and for the insects that many of them depend upon to hide and live in as well. And then lots of other things as well that just kind of keep that holistic ecosystem in place and provide a better, higher quality habitat for birds and other wildlife. And the last mandatory criteria that we look for is an organic certification. And we actually end with this, but it's actually the very first thing that we ask when farms are interested in becoming bird-friendly certified. We ask them, are you currently certified organic or eligible to become certified as organic? Because this is often one of the trickiest hurdles for farms. The organic certification process can take a bit of time for a farm to achieve, but our researchers have done a number of different kind of reviews on this and have determined that organic cert and that organic guarantee, there's no artificial pesticides or fertilizers ever used, is critically important in maintaining that high quality habitat and doing what's best for birds. So that kind of takes us to where we are now. I see we have a question in here. Does the 60% native vegetation species refer to the entire farm or only the portion dedicated to growing bird-friendly coffee? That's a great question. So when we perform these inspections, there's a bit of algebra that's involved to determine how many points of inspection are used depending upon the size of the farm. So kind of do that calculus, and it's within the area that's currently being inspected. You want to have 60% native vegetation there. So it's not necessarily referring to the entire farm, but to the area in which is being inspected, if that makes sense. Good question. So moving along to kind of where we are here in 2023. So we've had steady growth of our program since its inception, and this is kind of where we stand today. So we're proud to protect over 17,000 hectares of land in 12 different countries that are producing bird-friendly coffee. And I mentioned that teaser. We are getting ready to launch our second arm of the certification, bird-friendly cocoa, in just another few weeks. And we'll have an additional country that's joining the program. It's the Dominican Republic, who will be certifying. We've certified our first farms in the Dominican Republic as bird-friendly as well. So we work with a community of 5,400 producers who cumulatively generate around 36.7 million pounds of bird-friendly coffee each year. So we're excited to kind of have this growing community within our bird-friendly program, and we'll be kind of excited to share more about cocoa as that certification arm of our certification comes online very soon. So we have another question here. Can you explain the difference between shade certified and your certification? Yes, I absolutely can. We're going to get to that in just a couple minutes. Thank you for that question. So I'm going to pause and do another quick poll for folks. So I kind of just talked quite a bit about bird friendly and what it means, but what kind of impact does it have? So I'd love to know in the chat, if you want to add in, how many migratory birds or bird species do you think benefit from bird friendly coffee? Would love to know what your thoughts are there. Feel free to put your guess in the chat. Seeing 300, 500, 85%, hundreds. Love these guesses. So what I will do, feel free to keep putting in your guesses if you would like. 80 species, excellent, thank you. So the result is 1 in 10 bird species worldwide utilizes habitat on or near bird-friendly certified farms. So it's a lot of birds that are impacted by this bird-friendly habitat that we protect. And ultimately, what we found when we did research in Peru in particular is that bird-friendly farms can support over 4 times more birds than sun-grown monocultures. So we see kind of here, there was just that question about the difference between shade-grown and bird-friendly and what that means. So when we look over here at our sun-grown monoculture, thinking back to what that looked like, very little, additional vegetation that's retained, mostly just the coffee shrubs that are there, that can support around 61 bird species. Then we move up to partial shade here. So this is some trees that are maintained, but still mostly, the coffee shrub can be up to 79 bird species. And then when we move into the bird-friendly shade-grown agroforestry system, we've got 243 bird species that can be supported through this system like this. So there's a lot of benefit for birds through the bird-friendly farming system. But it's not just birds that are benefiting. Bird-friendly farms are better for wildlife, they're more climate resilient, and they can help farmers earn more money as well. So studies have shown that bird-friendly farms, while the bird-friendly certification was created with birds and migratory birds in particular in mind, these types of ecosystems, when they're preserved in this way, are also providing excellent habitat for amphibians and for small mammals and insects as well. So if we think back to kind of that original quote that we kind of started off with of, if you take care of birds, you take care of most of the big environmental problems in the world. Bird friendly is kind of embodying that. So good things for birds also mean good things for amphibians, small mammals, and insects as well. Bird-friendly farms are also more resilient to climate extremes. So when you're doing things like maintaining riparian buffers, so that space between, where a creek or a river or stream is and where your crop is, you're making sure that, if a flood event occurs, your crop isn't then getting washed out because of that. The shade canopy that you're maintaining is also keeping the temperatures a bit cooler underneath for your coffee crop. So you're getting less of a chance that the coffee is going to just kind of burn up if you get a really extreme heat event. And then additionally, if you get those strong floods, rains, things like that, they're often associated with climate extremes. Your bird-friendly root system, within the trees that are kept on your farm, they are keeping your land from being completely washed out or being subjected to landslides as well. The vegetation that you're maintaining is also contributing back into the ecosystem. So as the leaves fall and kind of the leaf litter gathers, on the ground floor there, you're getting better soil fertility and then more moisture that's kind of being retained as well by keeping those native trees and vegetation on your farm. And then, of course, the trees themselves, they act as excellent carbon sinks. So they're capturing the carbon from the atmosphere, drawing it back down into the soil, helping to sequester carbon and then fight climate change as well. And a lot of those trees, many of those trees can also provide secondary sources of income to farmers. So many of our farmers choose to grow fruit trees as some of the native trees that are planted kind of on their land. And that way, if it's not a great year for coffee for one reason or another, they can go ahead and sell mangoes, they can sell bananas, they can harvest maybe a portion of those trees to use as timber trees as well. So keeping that ecosystem in check and intact, but also having other ways to supplement their income. And it's kind of a two-way street. So it takes care of the farmers, and then the birds, they're actually helping the farmers as well by providing important ecosystem services like pollination, seed dispersal, insect control, and rodent control. So birds, we know, are excellent at many of these tasks, and by providing really great habitat for them on the bird-friendly farms, they're seeing, farmers are getting these free, if we can call them that, services in return. And insect control is actually a really interesting case in particular with coffee. So coffee farmers often deal with a really kind of annoying pest called the coffee berry borer, which will actually kind of bore into the coffee cherry itself. They live and feed and breed inside of that, and their presence severely impacts the quality of the coffee beans that are produced. But in Jamaica in particular, there were 3 migratory bird species that were responsible for about 50% of predation on the coffee berry borer. So in really keeping those numbers of the coffee berry borer down, the farmers in Jamaica could, kind of tip their hats to the prairie warbler, the black-throated blue warbler, and the American redstart for really helping to keep those populations down. And these are species that are only present if shade trees are also present. So keeping that quality habitat, providing that great space for birds, the birds are returning the favor by helping farmers keep that coffee berry borer infestation down to a minimum. So I have one more poll for folks, and this will lead into that one of the other questions that was posted in the chat here. So hopefully you can see the value of maintaining that forest-like habitat on coffee farms, but one of the most frequently asked questions we get is, isn't it just enough to drink shade-grown? Or what's the difference between shade-grown and bird-friendly? So I'd like to know in the chat, is bird-friendly coffee the same as shade-grown coffee? Or what do you think might be a difference, or what are your thoughts on that in the chat? Feel free to add in your thoughts there on the differences. Is it the same? Not quite the same, totally different? I'd love to know what you think. All right, so I see not the same, not as diverse. I see no, there's more criteria that needs to be met to be bird friendly. Over 200 species in bird friendly habitat. It's different. I love it. Folks are paying attention. So this is a really common question, and for good reason, because it's a lot of the time you're hearing about shade grown and you're thinking, oh, this is great, it's maintaining shade. What does that look like? So because we've heard this question many a time, we came up with sort of this little handy chart to kind of run through what it means for something to be bird friendly certified compared to some of the other certifications or terms that you might see or hear kind of on the market. So starting at the top up here, that's us as Smithsonian Bird Friendly. We also addressed Rainforest Alliance, because that's another common certification that addresses a lot of environmental and sustainability claims that folks are often familiar with. They certify coffee, cocoa, as well as a number of other products. There's the Fair Trade certification. Both Fair Trade International and Fair Trade USA are 2 common ones. They focus largely on maintaining fair wages and making sure that producers are getting paid in a responsible way that really kind of is true to what they should be earning for the work that they're putting into their crops. Then there's the organic certification, which we touched on briefly, looks largely at pesticide and fertilizer use and really strictly regulating them to ensure that there's no harm in excess chemicals that are going into these products. And then there's that term shade grown, which is actually, it's not a certification per se. It's more a term that many folks use to refer to a product that's grown underneath some sort of forest canopy, but there's no set definition, no real regulations around what it means for something to be shade grown. So we'll start kind of looking at shade cover here, bird friendly has strictly regulated criteria. Remember that 40% shade cover stat that we talked about for what it means to maintain that shade canopy over the farm and what it means to really retain trees and native habitat on their farm. Rainforest Alliance has shade cover as an optional part of their certification. So they actually don't require that within coffee farms, but it is something that coffee farmers can report on. So no kind of hard and fast things that they need to be bound to if they receive that, that certification. Fair trade and organic don't look at shade cover as part of what they do. It's kind of outside the scope of their main focus of their certification. And then shade grown, again, as we kind of talked about, it's not regulated, it's not defined. It's just kind of sort of a general term that folks can use that can mean anything from it's a full-blown agroforestry system to we've kept 2 or 3 trees on our 16 hectares of land. So can make a big difference there. When we look at pesticide regulation so bird friendly and organic are identical here with no synthetic pesticides or fertilizers that are allowed. Rainforest Alliance prohibits the most dangerous pesticides and chemicals in their certification. They do allow some, so they do not require organic practices there. Fair trade, it's an optional part of what they do. And then shade grown, again, not a certification itself, so it is not actually regulated. Then we look at biodiversity protection and what that means. So for bird friendly, all farms are providing a habitat for a diverse community of birds and other wildlife. With Rainforest Alliance, some farms are providing this, but it's at different and varying levels and degrees. They provide a good gateway for farms who want to do more, but bird friendly kind of remains that gold standard with the strictest criteria that are out there in comparison. Fair trade, again, kind of outside of their wheelhouse and what they do. So there's no regulations that are in place to help birds and other wildlife in particular, although they do, certainly do great things for economic sustainability and producers there. For the organic certification, biodiversity certainly benefits from the chemical restrictions, but there's no habitat requirement that is in place when we think about, preserving habitat on land, preserving trees and spaces for wildlife to live. And then for shade grown, again, there's no guarantees that are in place because it's not a regulated term that's independently verified. So we have a couple comments in here. Shade grown may be more negatively impacted by climate versus bird friendly. So not sure. I'm trying to kind of think through that. Think that again. So yeah. So for climate, when we're thinking about climate change, things like that, a shade grown system, if it's not regulated, if it doesn't have, all the same measures in place to protect that high quality habitat, yes, the farm could be less resilient to extreme climate events and could be more impacted by change as well. And then another comment, I assume a farm certified as growing bird friendly coffee would not be allowed to have only a portion of the farm as bird friendly with another portion being sun grown. Monitoring nightmare, I would think. Can you comment? Yeah, that's a really good question. So we actually do have some farms that are involved in our program who only choose to certify a portion of their land and a portion of their crop as bird friendly. So what we do in those instances is that area is specifically designated. It undergoes the inspection to ensure it meets criteria. And then we have measures in place to ensure that the coffee that's coming from that portion of land remains totally separate from the rest of their supply chain. So when it comes to harvesting, when it comes to drying, when it comes to packaging and exportation, they are all totally different, totally separate processes than any coffee that would be grown in a non-bird friendly system. So we do have some instances like that. Sometimes it's farms within a co-op, so a cooperative of farms that come together. We may have some that are bird friendly, but not all. And that's one way to go about it. In other instances, we have sort of these very, very big farms where maybe some areas are transitioning to bird friendly, but they're not there yet. So we can and do have systems in place to certify parts of farms, which is why it's critically important when you're looking for bird friendly coffee to look for that label, because the label, the icon that you see there, the bird friendly certification, that is the only way to tell and to absolutely verify that the coffee that you're drinking is coming from a bird friendly certified farm. Because even within farms themselves, sometimes if you say, oh, La Florida, I know them, they're bird friendly certified, it may be that not every acre or every bean of coffee coming from that particular farm or co-op is grown in a bird-friendly way. So that's why this certification is such an important part, or the label is such an important part in making sure your coffee you're drinking is bird-friendly certified. So as we're kind of getting towards the end of our talk here, despite the obvious benefits to biodiversity, to farmers, to the climate, the bird-friendly certification remains relatively niche. So our program has certainly grown over the years, but currently supply exceeds demand. So there's more bird-friendly coffee that's being produced, that's kind of being grown at that farm level than what's being marketed and sold with that bird-friendly logo on it. So what that kind of means for us is that the oversupply is a risk to the habitat that it currently is protecting. So if farmers don't have dedicated buyers for their bird-friendly coffee, if they don't have folks who are asking for this type of coffee at the consumer level, or buyers who are willing to pay for that bird-friendly logo as part of a part of their negotiations, then they may leave the program. They may decide, hey, this isn't worth it for me. I think I could be, getting more yield if I, got rid of some of this habitat that I'm protecting and just focused on maybe a sun-grown system, or I may be getting out of coffee altogether. We've seen that as well within the coffee growing community, that avocados, for instance, are very lucrative, for farmers. So they may say, hey, I'm out of coffee. I'm going to start growing avocado instead, and leave the program and potentially, change the habitat from there. So one of the things that our program has identified as a way to overcome that is to increase consumer awareness. So lots of folks kind of don't really know that we're out there, or exactly what we do, or what to look for, and how to find us. So we're working to kind of overcome that low consumer awareness, the confusion, product availability, by increasing the outreach and marketing efforts that we're doing through things like this, opportunities to chat with folks like you all, who are excited and passionate about about these types of things. And a lot of the work that we're doing now is being driven by some research that's recently been conducted in the zoo and aquarium world, to better engage with communities who care about wildlife. So we've had a lot of good things that have come through our work with zoos and aquariums, in North America, with lots of folks who are really supportive of the work that we're doing in getting bird-friendly and the drink bird-friendly message out to more communities. So that comes to how can you all get involved? So we encourage you all to kind of check out, our website. So you can go to drinkbirdfriendly.com to buy bird-friendly coffee yourselves. We don't yet have a coffee roaster in Nova Scotia, so we would love to have our program expand into that province. So we would love it if you would help us to recruit some new roasters to request bird-friendly coffee in your community. If you have a favorite local coffee spot that you love and they do good things for the environment, maybe they're already composting their coffee grounds, maybe they're already selling organic certified coffee, we would love it if you want to reach out to them and say, hey, have you heard about the bird-friendly program, and encourage them to get in touch with us and see if they would be interested in becoming Nova Scotia's first bird-friendly certified coffee roaster. And then, of course, just spreading the word. So we're always looking to grow our bird-friendly community. If there's folks that who enjoy a good cup of coffee, the other really great thing about bird-friendly is that we are all specialty grade coffee. So what that means is that it hits a cupping score of 85 points or higher. 80 points or higher for that specialty coffee grade. And so what that means is, you're getting a really delicious, rich, robust cup of coffee. And part of that has to do with the fact that the coffee is grown under the shade, which allows the coffee cherry itself a longer time to ripen, and results in a richer, more complex flavor and a better cup of coffee overall. So it's not just good for birds, it's good for your taste buds too. Something definitely to talk to for folks if they're kind of on the fence, be like, well, give it a shot. See how you like it, and I'm sure that'll kind of sell itself from there. So a few different ways to kind of get involved. And then just lastly, I wanted to close just kind of with a little, probably my favorite anecdote coming from this program. So as Tony mentioned in the introduction, I am a conservationist at heart and an educator by training. I worked at the National Zoo for about 8 years, and I was constantly on a quest to find meaningful conservation actions that we could connect to the animals that were under our care and the animals that we all care about. And when I came across the Bird Friendly program originally, probably 5 or 6 years ago, well before I started working here or even had that thought to work here, I really fell in love with this idea that it's not just, these species that are living a continent away that we're protecting through our choice of bird-friendly certified coffee. It's the animals that we see every day, especially during the warm weather months, the animals that are in your backyard, that are at your bird feeder. So, you could picture yourself drinking your cup of bird-friendly certified coffee, looking out, maybe you see an oriole like this on your backyard bird feeder, and that individual oriole could have come from a bird-friendly certified coffee farm. Not just that species, that individual might be either heading to, if it's in the fall, getting ready for heading to the overwintering season and making that grand migration, could be benefiting from the exact coffee that's sitting in your cup right there. And to me, there's no more personal connection than that when we think about the impact that we can have through our choices and what that means for wildlife.
Listen to you.
So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you all today. It's an absolute pleasure, and I would welcome any questions that you may have about the Bird Friendly program or anything else. All right, I see a couple questions that have come in. So Tony said, are there any plans for supplying major players such as Tim Hortons or Starbucks? The white whales of coffee in Canada for sure. So yeah, so we would love to kind of get to that scale. When the program first started, we had these initial meetings that were happening in the mid-90s around sustainability in coffee. And our program has never been quite big enough to capture the needs of the Starbucks and the Tim Hortons of the world. They are our white whale. We would love to bring them on board and into the program. The more noise we make, the more people that are asking for bird friendly, the more likely they are to answer my call if I go to pick up the phone. So we would love to kind of get them on board. We're kind of working at that smaller scale now with the roasters that we're able to get in touch with and kind of generate and drum up that interest. But we, if you have an in, we're always game to chat. I see as well the Nova Scotia Bird Society is working with 2 Canadian roasters. Yes, I believe Birds and Beans and Totem Roasters, if I have that correct, are the two groups that are working. I actually had your coffee with the puffin on the label from Totem Roasters not too long ago. It's a good one. So yeah, great sources of bird-friendly certified coffee through the society already, which is excellent. And then a question from Susan. Do you do any farm inspections? So me personally, I have not had the opportunity to visit a bird-friendly coffee farm. I joined the program in this role kind of during COVID. So I've only been in this role for a little over a year now. It's on the docket for me to be able to visit a bird-friendly certified farm in the not too distant future. But we're kind of working through a bit of a backlog of travel for our program. But I'm really excited to get the chance to go out there and to actually perform a bird-friendly inspection in person. Never drank coffee, but enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, Ken. If you're a chocolate fan, as we mentioned, we're going to be rolling out our bird-friendly cocoa certification very soon. So keep on the lookout, for more information on that coming soon. It's really delicious, very fine chocolate that will be coming your way. That'll be grown equally as sustainably as our bird-friendly coffee.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to get a tie-in with the big boys in the supply market, I must admit. And the price of Starbucks coffee and whatever, it'd be amazing for them to have a bird-friendly option, but who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be, well, it's not out of the question. So Rainforest Alliance, who is admittedly much, much bigger than we are, just to put it in perspective, they have a team of about 800 people who works for them, and we have 2.5. So we've got a long way to go before we get there, but they were able to get McDonald's to sell Rainforest Alliance certified coffee. So there is hope yet. I'm definitely, have that on my radar. See a couple more come through. May I share a comment? Of course, Paolo, if you'd like, by all means, share comments. And then a question for Barb. Do you think the current coffee folks will carry your cocoa? Great question. So our community, one of my favorite parts of this job is working with our bird-friendly community members. They are an incredibly passionate and fantastic group. Many of them are quite interested in bird-friendly cocoa and what that would mean to kind of stock that, you know, as alongside their coffee, potentially to think about making something like a bird-friendly mocha. So these are things that, yes, our bird-friendly community is very interested in kind of pursuing, in addition to the coffee that they're roasting.
Any more questions, folks, at all? If not, then obviously I'd encourage everybody to search out their favorite bird-friendly Smithsonian certified coffee at their local specialty shops, and it'll almost certainly be available from your favorite mail order outlets as well. And I'd like to thank Kristen, I can't get it right, for the presentation this evening. It's been fascinating, and to say thank you for everybody coming along. It's been fascinating, a really interesting subject. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or want to know more about Bird Friendly.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. At that, we'll start winding up the meeting. Oh, Paolo's got a question.
Hi. Let me just yeah, I was, oops. Okay, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I joined late. We had a terrible day on campus. There was a blackout. It was a disaster. No, thank you very much. And I really appreciate, because a few years ago, there was already some primordial work in this direction. And I see that actually the thing is really taking off, which I really appreciate. I just wanted to do a little remark, very marginal, but there is also the matter of the responsibility, responsibility of the coffee drinker, and I'm a big coffee drinker. Now, statistically, northern countries, Scandinavia, Canada, US, consume much more coffee per person than any other country, because because it takes a lot of coffee to make a kind of because the way it is grounded. And in Italy, we have the caffettiera, coffee maker. And I mean, with 7 grams, you have basically a dose which contains more caffeine if one is really, like me, addicted. And this is also very eco-friendly in the sense that there is no waste, just the coffee powder. And then in my case, goes to the garden and generates the plants. And so, I mean, very thankful just to my fellow friends, birders and community, we might also think of our own personal responsibility. And I'm not asking you to change taste. I mean, drink the coffee you like, but maybe we can work on the cups, like those plastic, non-recyclable, like one usage cups. It really frightens me when I go to the provincial park and I find those cups on the ground. They never disappear. They take room, they make waste, etc. So just on a very marginal note, but maybe, I mean, for those of us who are very passionate, like you, Christine, about this very important topic, there is even more room to improve. And thank you again for everything you said. Was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for that comment. And yeah, 100% agree. Bring your reusable cups with you when you go to get your coffee from your favorite cafe. The waste definitely does add up quickly. So if you can get a reusable mug that you love and you know you'll use, make sure you can bring that along with you for whatever you decide to fill up while you're out getting your caffeine fix. Thanks again so much, everyone.
That's awesome again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Have a good evening, everybody. The reason I said